Hi, this is Corey Saucier. I'm in George Gresham's Management 432 class at Jacksonville University, and I'm going to go over the Starbucks closing case on page 113 of our Essentials of Strategic Management textbook. The closing case starts off talking about how Starbucks in 2006 managed to increase their sales from $697 million to $7.8 billion and increase their net profits from $36 million to $540 million. It goes on to kind of give a little history of how Starbucks came to be in that kind of situation where they could actually do that in just 10 years. Now, 30 years ago, as of the book, Starbucks was just a store in the Pike Place Market in Seattle, and they just sold roasted coffee. Now is a store with more than 12,000 retail stores, and there are some 3,000 to be found in at least 40 countries outside the United States. A lot of the things that it talks about were Howard Schultz's insights into how a coffee shop could be or function as a third meeting place between home and work, where personal time was available. You could relax and it ultimately was a casual location. He recognized this concept in Italian culture, and he felt that there was definitely some money to be made bringing it to the American public. And from there, it just blew up and turned into a global phenomenon. One of the things that he realized about that whole image, the whole concept, was that it allowed him the opportunity to sell coffee at a premium, which meant that he could market this, or I guess his thought was that he could market this product and this whole concept as something which has a little bit of elitism in it, that it was a fine coffee establishment as opposed to a hole in the wall coffee or tea shop, which might have been a little more common, or a diner where historically was the place to go and get coffee prior to the advent of Starbucks. But one of the other things that Schultz recognized was that in order to kind of to create this atmosphere, he had to have great employees, and he recognized that great employees aren't just found, they're built. And so Starbucks has one of the most comprehensive employee training programs, and some of the best progressive compensation packages for part-time employees as well as full-time employees. They are in an industry where most people earn minimum wage and have no benefits, and in a market where that was common, Starbucks was leading the way, doing it a little bit different. Now, another thing that was very different about the way he attacked it was refusing to go down the path of franchising agreements, at least whenever possible. Starbucks owns all of its stores except for maybe just a few where that wasn't a possibility. And so they've really created something unique and interesting in that fashion, and it's allowed them the breadth of control to all of these locations to ensure that all of their employees are trained in a standard fashion and up to the quality that Howard Schultz demanded from this company. Now, other things they've done, they started developing some location strategies, identifying that even the direction of local foot traffic could impact how well a store would do, and that kind of thing really made a big impact in places like New York City, where you might see a Starbucks on one corner and you'd see it on the exact opposite corner, and it was just because having a location on each of those corners increased the foot traffic into any Starbucks location, so much so that it was more than worth the cost of having multiple locations so close together. It was a really interesting strategy, and it's proven to be very functional for them and very profitable. Now, going to the discussion questions, what functional strategies at Starbucks help the company to achieve superior financial performance? Well, I think one of the big things is their differentiation strategy. Their strategy to ensure an increased quality of the experience. Their focus on training with their employees, making sure that their employees are the elite in their industry. They tried to also build upon strong marketing strategies. Ensuring that there was more brand loyalty to Starbucks products over any other company that was out there, and I think a lot of that also had to do with advertising. The advertising really provided a strong barrier to imitation by any other competitor. And then they, most importantly, they focused on managing their materials and maintaining that consistent quality that everyone knows what a Starbucks cup of coffee is. It's like that ubiquitous symbol of a coffee shop in this country now. The second question is identify the resources, capabilities, and distinctive competencies of Starbucks. Well, I think one of the biggest resources is that highly trained employee pool. The fact that they've created or built these people up so that even the employees have a certain level of devotion to the organization. They've got resources like their investment into high quality equipment that is standardized so that everything is as close to being the same from one branch to another. No different than any fast food restaurant where you have that. What a McDonald's hamburger is. No matter what McDonald's you go to, it should be basically the same. It's the same kind of concept, except we're talking about a higher quality product. And another thing that I think is a big resource of theirs is just the overwhelming number of people who recognize the brand, or their brand recognition is definitely a resource of theirs. The fact that they've managed to make that name, to make Starbucks into the first name that rolls off the tongue when you're thinking about going and sitting in a coffee shop setting. As far as capabilities, I think they definitely have a strong capability of generating a generous amount of repeat business. They have a great non-franchise program, which has granted them far better control over the way that their products are from one location to another, the way that their employees work from one location to another, and their processes and so forth and so on. I think as far as a distinctive competency, I think their distinctive competency really comes down to generating demand for mid-priced coffee drinks and the overall kind of elitist cafe experience. I think that's really their biggest strength, is that they manage to make this a thing that people want. Um, the third question was, how do Starbucks resources, capabilities, and distinctive competencies translate into superior financial performance? I think that's pretty straightforward. Starbucks brings in such a high volume of people to buy their products. They've been branded very well to establish the quality of their product and the experience. So people in the market just they seek that kind of luxurious aspect, which they believe is part of the Starbucks brand. The fourth question was, why do you think Starbucks prefers to own its own stores wherever possible? I think this is another really straightforward one. Honestly, it's a combination of control and profit. By having more stores directly under them, there's less direct ownership. If somebody else owns a store, they're going to expect higher profits out of it, and so even if a singular store is only generating, so much revenue over the costs of having it, for Starbucks, that revenue is just like the concept of how pennies add up to nickels, nickels to dimes, dimes to quarters. It's so it may be just a very little from that one store, but you have a lot of stores with just a little more than that, and now you've got a lot more. I think that's a big part of it, and I think also, again, the control factor, the ability to ensure that every single one of those stores is absolutely functioning at the Starbucks quality level, regardless of whether or not the budget is tight for that particular location. And finally, how secure is their competitive advantage, and what are the barriers to imitation? I think the biggest barrier to imitation, and there are a lot of coffee shops out there that make a very good product. I would say they're very good imitators of the concept. However, the biggest barrier to imitation is that global aspect of Starbucks. You can go anywhere and find a Starbucks cup of coffee, and you know that it's going to be a good cup of coffee. Whereas, any given coffee shop in, Bodunk town, nowhere, you're not always going to be certain that it is a decent product. So I think the biggest barrier to entry is just their name recognition at this point. Having such a solid brand that is recognizable and globally ubiquitous is really the thing that really stops from anyone else from being a solid competitor in their market. And I really think that's something that's unique about Starbucks and is one of the big things that makes them so strong.